Hello everybody and welcome to the United Stand Monday morning, today's live show. Welcome to the show. Beth is in the studio to bring you all the latest Manchester United news. I don't know why I refer to myself in third person. I'm in the studio. We've got Ten Hag is here to stay as the title. Going to be talking about why some Man United fans who are already jumping on Erik Ten Hag out need to be patient and trust the process. We've got some stats to back it up, and if you don't like stats, we can just have a bit of a conversation about it too. But some people say stats don't lie. We're going to compare his seasons to Klopp and Arteta's first 2 seasons in charge. Got a little bit of news coming out on Sir Jim when the announcement is expected to be made. Donny van der Beek finalising his move to Frankfurt. Jose Mourinho has been speaking on a podcast about Manchester United and why the manager won't succeed if we don't change what's going on behind the scenes. Onana was talking to Sky, had a good performance yesterday. Want to talk a little bit about him because I do think he's been a little bit harshly criticised. And also, I want to ask you guys what you think Man United's best midfield 3 is when everyone is fit and available, because Kobe Mainoo needs to be starting more games, needs to be starting regular. He really is securing his spot as the box-to-box midfielder in that midfield, and I'm just loving it. But morning, everybody. Erik Ten Hag in. I'm not forcing my opinion on you, but I'm telling you my opinion. Erik Ten Hag in. Back the manager. As Man United fans, we can't turn it the first sign of a problem. We've got to stick by it. And of course, there has been lows this season, and it's been a really poor season so far. Performances have been dreadful at times. At some points, it's like there's really no light at the end of the tunnel. But when there's a process and there's a rebuild, and you've had 10 years, more than 10 years of terrible ownership, and you've had horrible decisions, horrible recruitment over 10 years, it's going to cost you at some point. And Erik Ten Hag can only do so much so quickly, and I think we've got to stick by him and wait for him to see what he does under the new Sir Jim regime. And just trust him in this process, trust this manager, because I think he's got what it takes. He's got, like I said on previous shows, he's got that ruthless streak that you need as a manager. The players are still behind him, which is a big positive note. And of course, the football needs to be better, but we've seen what he can do with the likes of Ajax. Let's hope he can implement that at Manchester United at some point. It's not happened yet, but last season he did really well. Let's see what he can do. But it's the start of hopefully a decent run. We've got some tough games coming up with Aston Villa and Nottingham Forest away, both away games before the new year. Okay, yes, but getting a point at Anfield, I don't care what Virgil van Dijk says. I don't care what Jurgen Klopp says. They can say all they want. We got a point at Anfield when they've not lost a game or even drawn a game there all season. They've scored a goal at Anfield in every game they've played so far this season. Man United have stopped them from doing that, got a clean sheet. In the position that we're in, it's exactly what we need. Could have easily nicked a goal at the end, by the way. We had a good couple clear-cut chances. We had the Garnacho one, we had the Højlund one. For me, more clear-cut chances than Liverpool got. Yeah, okay, Liverpool, they had a lot of shots from far out, and they did pepper us a lot, and they had more possession. Of course they did. But does anyone remember Onana having to make an unbelievable save? Does anyone remember them hitting the post? Does anyone remember having the clear-cut opportunity? I don't think so. We were forcing them to be impatient, to take shots when they probably should have passed it, because we were frustrating them and we defended very brilliantly. And of course, Varane was absolutely excellent. But welcome to the chat, everyone. Get all your chats in. I'm going to start off the show with a poll. Erik Ten Hag in, or would you like a new manager, Erik Ten Hag out? Because I want to see what the community is thinking. Of course, I am on the Erik Ten Hag in train. I feel like we have to be patient with the manager. I've said that. And thank God he's going nowhere. I think even if we lost yesterday, he was still going nowhere before Christmas. Got to wait for Sir Jim to come in, and we've got to see what he can do for the rest of the season. One thing I would say is, having no Europe, of course, as Man United fans, the standard shouldn't be to be out of Europe at this point in the competition. Me and Mark are doing a Champions League draw in a little bit, literally straight after this show. Man United aren't in it. We're doing it on That's Football, and that's frustrating because we want Man United to be in there, and we should have qualified in a group with Bayern Munich, Copenhagen and Galatasaray. We should have qualified second. We should have. Bayern Munich, great, but we had to qualify second. We didn't, and that is really poor. But being out of Europe, we have 2 games scheduled in January. When you're looking at the top 4 race, some people, and people are laughing at me when I tweeted this, think that we're completely out of it. At the moment, when you look at the teams that there are, you've got City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Villa, you know, you've got Newcastle, like so many good teams, fight Spurs, fighting for that top 4 place. But Man United are going to be out of Europe. That's going to be a massive hand. We'll get injuries back. Bear in mind, we've had so many injuries. I saw yesterday that Liverpool back 4 was the 8th different centre-back pairing for us. The centre-back pairing of Varane and Johnny Evans was the 8th different centre-back pairing we've started in the Premier League so far this season. Hopefully we'll get injuries back. Players will hopefully not get injured as much because we won't be playing as much. Ten Hag will have more time on the training ground. That could really give us an advantage in the top 4 race. So all is not lost. We are still in and around it. It's not looked promising considering our performances so far this season, but being out of Europe and focusing on our style of play and focusing on the training ground and focusing on the Premier League, it could be a massive help in us trying to fight for that top 4. Get in the comments down below if you think we are in with a chance of top 4, by the way. A lot of people have written us off. I think we're still in with a chance. If you said to me, Beth, now, you know, put 20 quid on whether United will get top 4 or not, I'd probably say, sack it, you know, it's only 20 quid, might as well put it on. But if you actually ask me, you know, if I do think genuinely Man United will get top 4 at the moment, it's no. But being out of Europe is a massive hand in that. And Ten Hag has to improve. Being out of Europe, being out of the Carabao Cup, there's no excuses now. The performances do have to improve. And people say, you know, the draw that we got against Anfield, we just shut short. We played like a relegation team. We're just, you know, that's not the way Man United should be playing. Look at how many injuries we've had. Look at this. We had Bruno suspended. Look at the injuries. Look at the team we had to field and the bench we had to field. Like, we had 8 academy players in the squad yesterday and 6 of them made it on for the field. That's brilliant for Man United. But we've had so many injuries. We had to do what we could to get some sort of performance and some sort of point yesterday. And I'm more than happy with it considering the situation that we're in. When we get these players back, you want to see the performance levels improve. Like when we went to Barcelona at the new camp last year, we didn't just sit 10 men behind the ball. We went at them a bit and we had a good performance, but we had a lot more players fit back then. We're on a different page right now and we've got to build up to that point. Song Kyung Min in the chat. Beth, you are so beautiful. I want to play for Man U. Son, thank you so much for your chat. I always notice them. Thank you very much for that. Make sure you get in the poll as well. Nick Stevens says, do you guys still attend press conferences? Would be good to understand why Erik Ten Hag picks both Scott and Bruno together. We need to stick with the double pivot. Nick, unfortunately, we only do at the moment European press conferences and we're out of the Europe. So not yet, but we are working on so many things behind the scenes and hopefully we'll be able to be in more in the future because I would love to ask that question. You know, in the last Bayern Munich press conference, we didn't manage to get a question because it was so busy and full. It was like the busiest press conference has been for Manchester United in a while. And I was actually going to ask him about playing Varane. And that would have worked so well because obviously Varane since has played. He played against Bayern and he's played now against Liverpool and he's been brilliant in both games. And against Liverpool, it was absolutely flawless performance from Raphael Varane. So that would have worked really well. But again, Erik Ten Hag, I hope somebody does ask him about playing a double pivot because we look so much more secure. We look so much more secure. Scott McTominay's the 10 is just a no. It's just a no. But when you have, say, for example, when you have like everyone fit, Casemiro and Mainu as the pivot and Bruno ahead of him, that could really work. Having Scott and Bruno so high up the pitch, leaving one man on their own, it's going to always hurt you. We need to play a double pivot. We were shoving Liverpool out to the wide areas. Look at how many crosses and how many corners he got. Okay, we defended as in the box brilliantly. Varane and Evans were a big part of that. I mean, Luke Shaw and Dalot did really well too. It can, you know, shutting down Luis Diaz and Salah and Trent and Tsimikas, and the wingers did the jobs as well, but the midfield actually didn't get cut through like we usually do, which was good, and a double pivot was a massive part of that. Ricky on the forum blaming Bruno, saying it's because Scott was playing as a 10. No, Ricky, it's because we had a double pivot. It's because we had a double pivot and we actually had a secure midfield in there. Even though Amrabat didn't play great, because you have 2 players in there, it's automatically going to make it so much easier to be more secure. Sheldon Coles, welcome to the United Stand Members Club. Not important, member for 4 months. Thank you very much. Son says, Beth, pick me now. Is it me or Scott McTominay? If you're asking me who's a better player, Son or Scott McTominay, it's the easiest question I've ever had in my life. No disrespect to McTominay, you know, done okay in recent games, and you know, I think he's a good squad player to have. I wouldn't sell him, I'd keep him around as a super sub. He's not a starter for me. But Son every day of the week, he's a better player than McTominay. Wayne says, morning Beth, I was disappointed we didn't win yesterday, having the best clear-cut chances. Great performance. Virgil van Dijk was fuming. Great. You know, Liverpool tears. Cry me a river. I'll do my, what's this? And it's not what you think it is. This is the world's smallest violin. Don't care. Do not care if you thought you dominated us. You didn't win the game and you didn't score. So have that. Mike Ross, member for 13 months. It was so good to see the passion and fighting spirit shown yesterday because that's the main thing you need. Correct. Team getting yellow cards all over the shop. I love it. I love it. It's a derby. Luke Shaw taking that cynical foul. Kobe Mainu, it was a harsh yellow, but going straight in for one, a harsh tackle. I love it. Dalot didn't deserve to get sent off, but I love the passion. I love the passion. Michael Oliver just couldn't take the heat. It's a derby. Can I just say, I don't want to go over old ground, but it's a derby and you're going to red card someone 2 yellows in about 10 seconds for getting annoyed at a throw-in that you got wrong. Head's falling off at the refereeing, but I love the passion, and that's what you want to see. The wingers, okay, we didn't create much going forward, but the work ethic. Anthony had the most tackles a single United player's had in the game so far this season. Garnacho, yeah, okay, he was a bit lightweight at times, but he did the job on Trent and got back. So, fair play to everyone, to be honest, especially considering this moment that they're in. No one can walk out of the Anfield game and say that team wasn't playing for Ten Hag and it didn't fight and it didn't stick to the game plan, because every single one of them players did. Ike, member for 14 months, says Beth is goated. Thank you very much for the chat. Somebody else on the super chat says, let me get it up. Ajiti is speaking my language. Onana deserves more credit for yesterday. Last year, De Gea faced 8 shots too and conceded 7. Yeah, that did happen. I want to talk about Onana in a little bit. But what's the poll saying so far? Erik Ten Hag in is winning the poll. It's not telling me the results. If someone can tell me the results, it's not working on my screen, but thank you for everyone for voting. 86% in. That is what we like to see, because us as a community back our manager and run it for the long haul. We're not impatient and we're behind this team. We're behind this team and behind the manager. Victor, member for 16 months. Beth, do you think Bruno has a place in the team? The team played better without him. Victor, yes, I do, because honestly, for me, it wasn't the fact Bruno wasn't in the team. It was simply the fact that we played with a double pivot. You play with Amrabat and Mainu behind Bruno Fernandes and not Scott McTominay as a striker next to Højlund and Bruno pressing and one man in midfield. Bruno's going to look better in that team. It's the system. Before, we were playing with Amrabat, Bruno, McTominay. You literally had McTominay next to Højlund, Bruno just behind that pressing, and a whole massive gap, and Amrabat sat on his own. Of course, that's going to make us get cut open more than what a double pivot with McTominay slightly ahead of that is going to. I think if you played Mainu and Amrabat, or my preferred, Mainu and Casemiro when Casemiro's back, with Bruno ahead of him, not only are you getting more structure, but you've got a player that, when we actually have the opportunity for a break, can put in some brilliant passes and has that flair and that creativity. Because, you know, in the first half yesterday, second half, Scott McTominay did a lot better. But first half, we actually did have a fair few opportunities to get hold of the ball in midfield and counter. And McTominay messed it up a little bit because that's not his role. He's got 2 assists in his whole career. He's not a 10. But McTominay does have a role as playing maybe as an 8 and as a super sub. But as a 10, it's a no. Bruno, for me, if you play that system, can work a lot better. So I hope Ten Hag does it a lot more often. And Ten Hag's been speaking, and I want to talk about it. But let's get into the comparisons, because start of the show was just, you know, talking a little bit about last night. I actually woke up not feeling depressed, which is not what I was expecting. So let's get into it. So I want to tell you some stats. Ten Hag versus Klopp and Arteta in their first 2 seasons. So Ten Hag versus Klopp in their first 2 seasons, guys. Klopp, 99 games. Erik Ten Hag, 86 games. Points, 178 for Jurgen Klopp, 168 for Erik Ten Hag. So 10 more points for Klopp in 13 more games. Wins, 50 for Klopp, 53 for Erik Ten Hag. Defeats, 28 for Klopp, 25 for Erik Ten Hag. Draws, 21 for Klopp, 9 for Erik Ten Hag. Points per game, 1.8 for Klopp, 1.95 for Erik Ten Hag. Again, Klopp, for me, is one of the best managers we've seen in the last God knows how many years. I think he's unbelievable. I think I don't like it because he manages Liverpool, but I think what he's done with that Liverpool side is unbelievable. But he didn't just start off with flying colours, because Klopp inherited a terrible team. He did. And that team now, I don't think there's a single player, obviously he's been manager for so long, but he completely revolutionise that Liverpool side, and he did get some transfers wrong. Naby Keita was a bit of a shocking signing. He had Minamino, that wasn't a great signing. He's had some poor signings over the time, just like Ten Hag's going to have some. Not every transfer pays off. The difference with Klopp is he has a brilliant sporting director above him that went and got him Mo Salah, went and got him Luis Diaz, went and got him Alisson, you know, Virgil van Dijk, and went and did these things. Ten Hag's doing everything on his own, and that's why I'm hoping to God that Sir Jim can bring in some sort of structure for him. But for Ten Hag to take over the worst ever point side of a Man United side in Premier League history, just like Klopp took over a terrible Liverpool side, which still, to be honest, has only won one title in over 30 years, just like Roy Keane said, Ten Hag, you know, he's getting absolutely fed to the lions, he's getting annihilated, when realistically, the 1.8 per game for Jurgen Klopp over his first 2 seasons, the 1.95 for Ten Hag, it's looking very good in Ten Hag's favour. And this is why I see the potential in Ten Hag. Jurgen Klopp is a better manager than Ten Hag, no, do not get me wrong, at this point in time. And he's done so well. He's won Champions League, he's won Premier League, he's won everything you can win at Liverpool. So brilliant stuff for him. I mean, I don't think they've won the Europa League, so maybe they can do that this year. Brilliant for him, not good for United fans who they are arch rivals, can't stand them. I wish they were in the relegation zone. But, you know, when you look at Ten Hag compared to Klopp, people are so quick to jump on Ten Hag out with the first little sign of weakness and the first sign of things not going our way. Sometimes we've got to stick through the bad times to get to the good times. And what Ten Hag has showed is potential. He's shown he's got a ruthless streak. He's set the standards. He's setting a culture. And that's exactly what this club needs. What Ten Hag does need is the help behind the scenes, the structure that Klopp has behind him. Remember, Klopp didn't want to come to United because he said it was like Disney World. Like, he wanted somewhere where he had a structure behind him, and he got that at Liverpool. Ten Hag needs that. Hopefully, Sir Jim can bring that in. And that is so massive. Truth Seeker says Klopp still had an identical style of play from the beginning. We just play fossil football. That's a good point. The style of play. I know what Ten Hag's trying to do. It's not worked yet. Ten Hag needs to make some decisions. He needs to play with a double pivot. He can play transition football, but play with a double pivot. And he needs to play the style of play that Man United are going to play week in, week out, and we need to get familiar with that. I completely agree in that. And this is why there is flaws. I'm not saying Ten Hag's all bells and whistles, because there's so much that needs to be improved. But so far, I think he needs to be afforded that chance. But the style of play is a very good argument. It's a very good argument. We've got, compared to Arteta, Ten Hag compared to Arteta. And so many people tell me, but Arteta had a style of play straight away. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. I remember Arsenal vividly. They were so poor. They were terrible for a long time. And Arteta got some really good signings in. And to be fair, like anybody from the outside, Mark said it a lot, I said it myself. I don't know if I was on the channel at the time, to be honest, everything's like a blur. But people from the outside knew Arteta was the right guy to stick with. You know, Arsenal fans, not all of them, bless them, but of quite like a few of them were printing Arteta out t-shirts and were saying he needed to go. They did not have a style of play, a great one anyway. And they were really poor, but you could tell that Arteta was trying to do the right things behind the scenes. He got rid of Aubameyang. I think he got rid of Ozil, who I thought was a brilliant player. And he again had some signings that didn't work out. He's definitely had signings that didn't work out. He's also had signings that have done really well. Saliba coming back was a massive one. Gabriel was a good signing. You know, Ben White, he's not the best right back in the world, but he's done well for Arsenal. Declan Rice is just a phenomenal signing this season. Okay, they need another striker, but Jesus is another one that really kind of took him up to the next level. Martinelli coming through. Like, Arteta has done really well with that team considering where they're at, because that Arsenal team was rubbish as well. But they had some really bad periods, some tough periods where Arteta was on the brink of the sack. He really was. So people who tell me, yeah, but Arsenal always had a style of play. You always could tell Arteta was going to do well. No, they didn't. Or else Arsenal fans wouldn't have been saying Arteta out with Arteta out t-shirts, and the media wouldn't have been circling Arteta the way they did, because he was. I remember him coming out for interviews, game after game they were losing, and he just looked broken. And I remember the Arsenal documentary, they were getting beat, and they were poor. They were really poor. But he's come through it, and he's now doing brilliantly. And you can see the style of play. I wish we could play the way Arsenal do now, and I hate to say it as a United fan. So sometimes you just need a little bit of patience. Not Rome wasn't built in the day, and people don't like that phrase, but it's so true. Nothing comes overnight. People think we'll go and get Zidane or Ancelotti in and click our fingers, we're winning Champions League and Premier Leagues, and the last decade of terrible ownership goes down the drain. That won't happen. We've got to stick with the process. But anyway, Arteta and Ten Hag in their first 2 seasons, both 86 games each, Arteta, 157 points. Ten Hag, 168 points. Wins for Ten Hag, 53. Wins for Arteta, 47. Defeats for Arteta, 23. Defeats for Erik Ten Hag, 25. Draws for Arteta, 16. Draws for Ten Hag, 9. Points per game for Arteta, 1.83. Points per game for Erik Ten Hag, 1.95. So we've got to look at these factors and think about this when we think about the patience for Ten Hag that is needed and the state that Man United are in. People don't like to hear it, but Ten Hag took over a very, very poor squad and a team that finished the worst in Premier League points history. Arteta took over a very poor squad also. Klopp took over a poor squad. But I think these are points that we've also got to kind of take into consideration when we're looking at the manager, whether to back or sack. And I think we've got to back and give him a regime to work under. I was the first person, I think, on this channel to say get Erik Ten Hag in, and I still stand by that. The way he was playing football in Europe with Ajax was brilliant. You don't just lose that overnight. Just the way Onana says, you don't go from being the best keeper in the Champions League to being the worst keeper in the world. Ten Hag doesn't go from being one of the best coaches, up-and-coming coaches in Europe, to being sackable in a season when he came third with the worst ever points history and won a trophy. You've got to kind of sometimes accept that, your manager and your players have flaws and we're in a flawed time, but give them the patience to overcome that. And if he doesn't overcome it, then we can look at it at the end of next season, maybe this, next season, look at it. But for now, I think he deserves our time. Zayn Miassi says we are on course for the league and the Champions League. Come on, you Gunners. Zayn, I really hope you pull Bayern Munich or PSG and you go on your way out of the Champions League, because Champions League and Arsenal, it just doesn't mix. Never won it, and I don't think you should win it, because Europe and Arsenal, it's just, they don't go hand in hand. Akil Aravind, the problem with us is that we expect a lot to happen positive in a short time. We as fans need to realise any good manager at United needs time. Akil, completely on that front with you. Ronnie Dodge says, I would play Mount on the right wing when he's back. Not a bad shout. Anthony did all right, but he's so defensively good. But going forward, he's great at getting to a certain point. His strength and his pace. And then he gets to a certain point and he can't go past the fullback because he don't have a right foot and he cuts inside and it completely slows down. I generally think Anthony could play as a left back. I generally do, the way he plays. I mean, there's no shame in it. I mean, some players do convert back to being a fullback. Having a bit of a laugh with that, but generally think he could do the job. But I would love to see Anthony play on the left wing as well. Driving with his left foot, putting crosses in with his left foot. I'd love to see it. Don't think Erik Ten Hag would do it, but I'd love to see it. But I do think Anthony is improving. But Mount, at the moment, I don't think when everyone's fit would get into the midfield, especially with Kobbie Mainoo coming through. Kobbie Mainoo has to play. He's doing brilliantly. Obviously, don't want to get too carried away. But to me, he looks like the answer to our box-to-box problem. The passes he can see, the position he finds himself in, his anticipation, his awareness, his ability to read the game. It's just, for 18 years old, it's sensational. So I think we've got to keep playing Mainoo, and I think he will grab that starting spot. But early days, but he does look very good. But Mount, he's got a role to play. I won't write him off, and playing him on the right wing is definitely a shout that I think Erik Ten Hag could look at. John says, Beth, did you do Michael Oliver's hair? No, because if I did it'd look better than that. Joking. Jay Sheridan, sign Amrabat, keep Casemiro, sign a young 8. How do we feel about signing Amrabat? I personally wouldn't. Love the fact he gives everything, I just don't think he's good enough. I wouldn't sign Amrabat permanently, but I would keep Casemiro, and I would look to sign another 8 midfielder. Victor, member for 15 months. I've read that one out. Thank you very much for that. Don't want Amrabat. Some people are saying, yeah, Amrabat got a lot of stick yesterday. He give everything, but I just don't think he's good enough. And, them United scouts that were saying that they didn't think he was good enough, maybe they were onto something, which is probably the first time they've been onto something in a number of years. But honestly, I do think we do scout some good talents. Like, remember Camavinga? We were going to go for him. Jude Bellingham, we were going to go for him. Caicedo, we were going to go for him. The scouting, we scouted Caicedo, we scouted Camavinga, we scouted Jude Bellingham. It was the board above that wouldn't sign off on these deals and paying the money. I mean, Jude Bellingham just wanted to go to Dortmund because he thought he'd have more minutes, and United couldn't guarantee him game time. We look so stupid. The fact we didn't get that deal done was one of the biggest fumbles in the history of the sport, honestly. Caicedo, didn't want to pay the extra couple million for him. Crazy, because I think we were looking at signing Caicedo for 4.6 million at the time, right, if I remember correctly. And then, which is crazy because he went for like over 100. And then Camavinga, we were going to get him, but I think his price tag was like 30 million. We wanted to pay 25 and we went and bought Ronaldo. So, you know, we have missed out on some, we have scouted in the past, but we just haven't paid the money. The board hadn't signed off on it because they don't trust the people in front of them, which is crazy. But also at the same time, like we scouted 150 right backs and ended up with Wan-Bissaka, which is an absolute mind-boggling scenario to me, especially when João Cancelo was on the cards at that moment in time. So you know, behind the scenes needs a lot of work. It needs a lot of work. Absolutely needs a lot of work. But yeah. Patrick Jahey says, to compare managers with different owners' culture in different years is useless. It would only be valid if they got the same players, the same teams, the same owners. Patrick, you know, don't take it too deeply. I just wanted to kind of show the comparisons. If anything, Man United has the worst structure out of the lot. He didn't inherit the worst team. I think Arteta inherited the worst team, but he did inherit a poor team. So, I mean, I was just combining and for everybody that's looking at him being so harsh on Ten Hag, maybe we should look at the managers that are doing really well in the league now and see where they came from. Akhil says, one suggestion for Ten Hag, please develop the midfield around Mainu. What a talent. Sell McTominay, keep Amrabat as a bench option. I wouldn't keep Amrabat as a bench option, to be honest. What's the point if he's not good enough? I mean, maybe. I wouldn't like be brutally upset if we kept him. I just don't think there's any point of buying him if he's not good enough. It's like with Sabitzer, people were annoyed at me when I said not to keep him. I like Sabitzer, I just didn't think he was good enough level to sign him permanently. He's doing great at Dortmund, by the way. But when I'm signing players, if I've seen them, I really want the top standard to be coming into Manchester United. The top standard. I think he's a bit too slow for the Prem, to be honest with you, Amrabat. But anyway, let's move on to the next point of call. So one thing that Ten Hag did say is, I said after that game in the dressing room, I'm very proud of this team. We should do this more often. For instance, Newcastle was also a tough game. We made one mistake, we switch off and concede the goal. But when you stay in the game, when you add discipline in your game plan, finally it opens up and you can take chances if you get 2, 3 or 4 passes in after the ball regains, get the switches in, and then you can be really dominant more in the game. Ten Hag, absolutely, please do it more. Please play the double pivot more. I'm on my knees for the double pivot more, especially with like Mainu and Amrabat or Mainu and Casemiro. Any sort of CDM in there next to Mainu and Bruno ahead of it. Please do it. Please do it. I mean, you could even play McTominay as long as he plays as a holder, but I think we've got better holders than McTominay. I think his position is a super sub coming on as a box-to-box. But yeah, please do play like that more often. Not in a sense of, I don't want to play part of the bus football continuously. That's not what I want us to do. But I want us to definitely get more players behind the ball and have a midfield that doesn't look like it's going to get run through and actually play a double pivot. Would love that, Ten Hag. Please do it more often. Like I said, like Mainu is just so good in there for the option next to a CDM. You've got to kind of start looking at that. And the thing is, what does Ten Hag do? Because you have to play a holder in Amrabat or Casemiro. If Mainu carries on the way he has, you've got to play him as the 8, and then Bruno is captain. And for me, like he says on the regains, can probably make the most out of the regains with his creativity. So McTominay's been playing out every game. Like, for me, he moves into that super sub role. Anyway, let's move on to the next bit of news. A lot of the show gone by. So on Sir Jim, sources around the deal claim that there's some hope that it could happen this week. This is what the United stand understands. However, it is definitely not certain, so it could roll on. To me, it probably is going to roll on. Probably will be after Christmas. But it could happen this week. There is some hope it could happen. That's the news that we can bring to you. There's not really much else we can say. Coming from Pletty Goal, Florian Plettenberg, Donny van der Beek's Frankfurt medical will take place in Frankfurt and is expected to be finalised by Wednesday. Good luck to Donny van der Beek. Very well wishes on the next journey of his career. Sad that he wasted 3 years of his career at United. Tough on him because we clearly signed him without a plan. He's a good footballer. We're not a good footballing side, and at the end of the day, he just didn't work in our system. So all the best to Donny. I'm so sad he wasted 3 years of his career, but ultimately, you know, sometimes things don't match up, and I think it's on whoever signed him that there clearly wasn't a plan for him. So sorry, Donny, and I wish you all the best at Frankfurt. Next up. Right, okay, what should I talk about next, everybody? You can decide in the chat. Should I talk about Onana or Jose Mourinho's comments on the recent podcast he did? Get in the chat. What should I talk about next? Onana or Jose Mourinho's recent comments? Akhil, Aravind, Beth, thoughts on this week? We have seen enough from Salah and Saka tracking back like Anthony does. ask ourselves, why does that happen often? It's a team. Yeah, as a team, I cannot fault the wingers for the tracking back they did yesterday. Absolutely cannot fault it. We need more output going forward, absolutely. The problem was before we weren't getting enough output tracking back, and we also weren't getting any output going forward, so it was a tough one. Like, it was tough, but if you work hard for the team, you will get opportunities. Yesterday, Garnacho got an opportunity. Anthony put a good pass in to link up to the Højlund chance. Unfortunately, they didn't come to anything. We need to create more than that, but the basics is doing the defensive work. Every good winger has done that. Giggs, Beckham, world-class players have done it. You've got to put in the work. Salah does it, Saka does it. You've got to do it. I mean, all City's wingers do it. Jack Grealish does it all the time. Like, you've got to put in the work. I remember Pep used to sub Mahrez off. Mahrez is one of the best wingers I've ever seen in the Prem. He's unbelievable. His first touch is so good. But I remember Pep used to sub Mahrez off because his work rate, he got frustrated with it. So, I mean, Mahrez is incredible. You've got to do it all the top teams. SK says, I know we give Manu a lot of praise, but if you deep it, he played Everton away, Liverpool away, Newcastle all away. I'd also like to hear your thoughts on Jose. Yeah, Manu's introduction is like Everton away, Liverpool away, Newcastle away. They're his introductory games of the Premier League. Ten Hag, if you're good enough, you're old enough, sink or swim. And he absolutely swam. So fair play to the guy, because he could have easily, you know, kind of sunk in them pressurised environments at 18 years old, even if you are a top player in that situation. And he is a top player, and the composure he showed at 18, I just think he's going to be such a good player. I really think I said now, he's already really good. I think he's going to be great, and I don't want to get carried away, but I watched this guy in the under-21s a lot last year, and even the year before. He's quality. Anyway, got some news coming in from Samuel Luckhurst before I move on to the Mourinho stuff. Coming in from Samuel Luckhurst. And I'm not doing the Zinedine Zidane chant. I'm clapping because it's coming in that Raphael Varane is hopeful Manchester United will trigger the 1-year extension in his contract, having communicated the incorrect expiry date at the time of his signing. Before his recall last week, Varane is understood to have been concerned he was forced out. The centre-half wants to stay at Manchester United. I love Varane, and he needs to stay. If we got rid of Varane before we got rid of, you know, other players at the club that need to leave, like, for example, Varane's our best centre-back fit. He's better than Maguire, better than Lindelof, better than Evans. Fit, fully fit. Martinez is great too. I'm not saying we need to get rid of, you know, Maguire, Lindelof, Evans right now, but eventually, if we want to be a top club, all three of them I don't think are good enough to be starting centre-backs. Evans has been brilliant in his day. He's the only member that's won a Premier League in that squad, and he's doing a good job now, credit to him. But if we're looking to the future, all of them three players would need to be moved on, in my opinion, before Varane. Varane, of course, has got injury concerns, and okay, yes, he had to be played into form, and he's not been at his best previously this season, but these last two games against Bayern Munich, and especially at Liverpool, he showed his class. He showed why he's, for me, the best centre-back at the club when he's fit. He has to stay. He has to stay, in my opinion. And I've debated back and forth on this. I was thinking, well, maybe he should go because, you know, he's injured a lot and you can't build around someone who's injured. But I've thought about it, and I've saw his Liverpool performance, and I've thought about what Varane offers in terms of experience, dressing room, morale, trophies he's won, the form he can produce when he is fully fit. And I think we should keep him, because if he's fully fit, you can get such a good performance out of him, and it's a great asset to have. So for me, I think it would be a massive mistake selling him before other players in the squad. Eventually, we will probably move him on because, you know, of the age and the injuries. But for now, he absolutely has to stay. And the fact that, you know, I've seen reports saying Varane wants to retire at Manchester United. He loves the club. He loves competing for Man United. And I love that. I love that. He's such a leader at the back, and he's a player I admire. Even though he's had some poor form this season, he's had such a good career. He had such a good season last season. And he's so good on his day that, for me, Varane, he's just earned so much respect as a player, and I absolutely love him. So I would keep him, and I'm glad that he's hoping to trigger the extension and he wants to stay at the club, and I hope Ten Hag wants that too. And he should want that, especially after seeing what happened yesterday with Varane being in the team. Varane has to stay. Varane has to stay in the team, and he can play left-sided centre-back. I was on board with the Ten Hag excuse of the fact he can't play left-sided centre-back. I was going along with it because I thought, if that's Ten Hag's philosophy, it's Ten Hag's philosophy. But now I've seen Varane for 2 games. There's no excuse. That excuse ain't going to slide with me because he can play it. And if he's fit, I think he has to play. So, yeah. I think he should have been captain yesterday as well, but I'm not too fussed about it. We got a draw, and McTominay knows the club inside out, but Varane would have been my captain. But Varane has to stay for me, and I'm absolutely buzzing about that news. If it does happen, I hope he does stay. It's a no-brainer. He knows what it takes to win. He's got experience, and that's what we need in that dressing room, especially with a lot of young players in there. Of course, I do think him and Ten Hag, I don't think they had an argument behind the scenes. I don't think that happened, but I think Varane was probably pretty annoyed that he wasn't part of the squad. I think Ten Hag probably got impatient and frustrated with the amount of injuries he picked up, and they kind of butted heads in that sense. And obviously he was dropped for the derby and he was gutted about that, and Ten Hag probably was just frustrated with injuries and the left-sided centre-back thing, whatever. But now he's got himself back into the team, and he's just played excellently and done the work. He has to stay in there for me, and hopefully it can be an upwards trajectory from here. Because I remember last season, Ten Hag did everything he could to get Varane on a training regime where he was fit as much as he could be, and Martinez and Varane was his starting pair, and he was so important to Varane. And with that word out of pre-season is Ten Hag realised Varane was his best centre-back and he needed to do everything to keep him fit. So Ten Hag does rate Varane. They've obviously had some sort of, a little bit of a rock in the road of the relationship over the last 2 weeks. I don't think there was an argument of sort. I just think it was out of favour, and hopefully now we can get back on track with him, because I think he on his day he's top quality Varane. Elliot says, McTominay Ricky's son, or does he see something we don't? You'll have to speak to Ricky about that. SK says, keeping Varane means you can afford to get a pair of young quality centre-backs. Learn from Varane, otherwise you would pay for a peak centre-back for a lot of money. Yeah, exactly. By the way, I'd still be buying Todibo or Antonio Silva. I would be getting rid of either Maguire or Lindelof, probably, if we were going to sell any right now. Get in the comments down below what you would do. And that's not me going in on Maguire, because Maguire's been really good in his, this last bit of form. He got Premier League Player of the Month. I'm just thinking long term, when we're looking at the top level, I don't think he can do it at the top level in the long term. But Maguire has been doing really well. I'd like to see Maguire and Varane play together if Maguire gets fit earlier. But then obviously when Martinez comes back, Martinez will play. But interesting stuff, everybody. And good news coming out on a Monday morning. Next little bit of stuff. Get your opinions in down on Varane, by the way. I'll be interested to see what you guys think. Zero Blade says, isn't Lindelof's contract running out? I'll have to have a look at that one. Jose Mourinho, talking about his time at Manchester United on a podcast recently, he says, and this is interesting, because obviously Richard Arnold has left the club now, but Mourinho said, Man United still have a CEO who is an amazing person, and that's Richard Arnold. I had him as a commercial director, not a CEO, and I would have loved to have him on my side in there, but the club wasn't easy. On that, I think we can all agree Richard Arnold is not the right person to be CEO of Manchester United. That's been proven. And I'm not saying by any instance Richard Arnold isn't a good person. He probably is a really nice person, a good person. But he's not elite at his job as a CEO. And that's why he's not at the club anymore. And we all know how much Mourinho didn't like Woodward, the same as all the fans. And he was absolutely spot on with that. But Richard Arnold, he could be an amazing person for all we know. We don't know him. But also at the same time, he wasn't good enough as a CEO to take us forward. He proved that in the way he's handled a lot of things. He proved that in a lot of instances. I don't have to go over old ground. So I'm happy Richard Arnold's left as CEO. I don't think he was good enough in that role. I don't think a lot of staff behind the scenes at Manchester United, for example, I don't think John Murtough is a good enough sporting director at the moment. I do think a lot of changes need to be made and upgrades need to be had. But Jose Mourinho loves to take a swipe at the Glazers and Ed Woodward, and I'm all for that, because the Glazers and Ed Woodward were both terrible for this football club, and Mourinho notices that, and that's all I can say. I don't think Arnold would have been a good enough CEO for the project. The fact he's gone is, for me, a good thing, but he could be an amazing person. Jose Mourinho is acknowledging that. He also said, I don't have regrets. Man United fans know I gave everything and I love the club. I went there once with Sky. I was in the box and the whole stadium turned to me, applauding and singing for me. Mourinho will have the respect from me as a United fan, I'm sure a lot of you guys, forever. winning the Europa League with us, winning the Cup, like, he always says finishing second was his best ever achievement, whether that's satire or not. It probably is with the stuff he has to deal with behind the scenes. The guy's won the Italian treble, he's won Champions Leagues, like he's done amazingly in his career. Unfortunately, it didn't end well, and to be honest, now if I had Mourinho now, if I knew what I knew now then, I probably would have stuck with Mourinho, because I know how soft a lot of, you know, the mentality is with Man United behind the scenes. And I knew that we had so much player power. And now I look back and I think the player power was extreme. So I probably would have stuck with him. But Mourinho, we probably got him in too late. I would have loved to get him in earlier, but he's an unbelievable manager, an unbelievable character. And we had some great times under Mourinho. And I'd love it. I'd love it if he was still at Sky, because he was brilliant on that as well. And I'd love it if he was back in the Premier League, because he's such a character. But he does well everywhere he goes. Obviously Spurs probably should have won a trophy with them, but got sacked just before the final, which is a bit unfair. But Mourinho speaking there, and he'll always have the respect of me for sure. But with Ten Hag now, Mourinho said that there's still, I mean, this is someone who watched the podcast said that Mourinho said that there is still people at Man United today, not just players, who said that United wouldn't win anything if we don't get rid of them, and people that want to blame the manager. Exactly. You know, there's people, Jose has said so many times, there's so much wrong behind the scenes at Man United, and that's why you just can't pin it all on the manager. And this is why we've got to give Erik Ten Hag time and backing, and we've got to hope to God Sir Jim can make some sort of impact. It won't be the same as a full takeover. Hopefully, eventually he will get the full takeover, but as much as he can do while he's there, everything will make a difference because of how poor we've been running behind the scenes. So Mourinho, a lot of love from the Man United fans. He says he loves United still, loves the club, and we love that. We love that. Love Jose, and I'm always thankful for what he did for the club, and I'm glad that he exposes that there's so much more to blame behind the scenes than just the manager. And I think that a lot of people who just want to jump on the manager every second and get a new manager and do this whole turnover and then jump on the next manager when things don't want to go that way, they just want quick fixes. In modern day society, it's like the TikTok society. Just scroll through and dopamine. A lot of these people that just want the manager out, they just want quick fix. You've got to look at what Mourinho is, one of the best footballing managers that's ever been. And he's saying, he's worked at the club, he's been in and behind it, and he's saying there's so much that needs to be improved behind the scenes, not just the manager. So you've got to take note of that. Akil Aravind, era's come to the end. Looks like City's end is here. Akil, do not speak too soon. I still think City will win the league. Pep Guardiola's come out in a press conference and said they'll win the league. They're going to get De Bruyne back. They could easily go on a mad run. I wouldn't speak too soon. I really wouldn't. But it's good to see him struggling. It's good to see him struggling a little bit. It's mad, isn't it? Because, you know, you look at City and their version of struggling would be absolutely buzzing with, and that's just where the standards have dropped over the years and where we're at right now as a club, and we want to get back up to that level. Lazio, thank you very much for your comment. TikTok Society comment of the day. I mean, it is the world we're in. I'm guilty of it myself. I love a bit of scrolling on TikTok at night time, probably too much than I should, but I have learnt the value of patience, which I've always been taught that. So obviously everyone can have their own opinion, but that's just the way that I see it. Lastly, want to finish off the show. First of all, everybody get in the comments. I was talking about this. I've talked about this with my family. I've talked about this with my friends. Get in when everybody's fit, your Man United best midfield three. I'll say mine: Casemiro, Mainu and Bruno. That's what I think we need to move forward with. Do I think we need to be looking at potentially another holding midfielder in the summer? Yes, but I still think Casemiro is way up to the job and on form, the best one there. And I still think he's got more to give for Man United. Mainu developing really nicely into a good 8 for us, and Bruno creative 10. That would be mine, but everyone get your opinions in. I still think that Mount, Ericsson, you know, have a part to play in this as well. And even McTominay, even Hannibal, like, they have parts to play. They have McTominay could be a super sub. Ericsson's good technically in a home game. You know, Mount can play left or right wing and can play as a 10 as well in different certain scenarios in different games. So I think they all can have a part to play, but that would be my starting midfield three. Just had some news through. Newcastle United sporting director Dan Ashworth is the Ineos Group's prime choice to assume the role at Manchester United, with the Petrochemicals Group also open to retaining football director John Murtough. Well, guys, that's a bit of news coming through. Dan Ashworth is the group's prime choice to assume the role at Manchester United. Current Newcastle sporting director Dan Ashworth I mean, what do you guys make of that? Newcastle sporting director Dan Ashworth is the prime candidate to assume the role at Manchester United, with John Murtough, the group being the in-house group being open to retaining football director John Murtough. I always said this: John Murtough will stay in some sort of job at Man United. They won't just sack him immediately. And I never wish anyone to get sacked, because he's probably a lovely guy, John Murtough. He probably is. Do I think he's good enough to be Man United's sporting director? No. What I think will happen is it'll be probably a duo role, and then maybe John Murtough might get another title at some other point. But he won't be doing the role as, I think, prime main sporting director under a new group. That's why we're looking at Dan Ashworth. And what do you guys make of Dan Ashworth, of the appointment of Dan Ashworth? I was very convinced we were going to go down the route of Paul Mitchell. Paul Mitchell's been in Manchester. He's wanted the job for a long time. I thought absolutely it was going to be Paul Mitchell, but it looks like we're going to go with Dan Ashworth. Unless we go Dan Ashworth, Paul Mitchell and John Murtough and have kind of like a trio, multiple role going on the same way Chelsea have done. Let me know what you guys think. But I thought it was going to be Paul Mitchell, and Paul Mitchell has got a very good CV at getting talent in early doors. He's obviously got a very good CV of selling it on, but Man United, that doesn't happen. You get talent in, and you know, if I do think sometimes we've not sold it at the right time. We've held on for too long, but you want to build them up to be prime players for Man United, not to sell on to other clubs. So I did think Paul Mitchell was a really good option, but it looks like it is going to be Dan Ashworth. What do people think about the Dan Ashworth appointment if it does happen? And what do you think about John Murtough potentially staying in the role? Because, like I said, I don't think John Murtough will be a significant part in that role. I think that'll happen when they first, not just immediately come in and sack him or move him, and that won't happen. They'll evaluate it, and I think it'll be a multiple role where he plays some sort of part, or he'll get moved into another title, or he might end up leaving the club. But I wouldn't wish for someone to be sacked, and it's good to think that we are thinking about getting someone else in. I wouldn't be happy if they solely went with John Murtough. We do need an upgrade, absolutely need an upgrade. But I think this is just like the manoeuvring of the parts. Dan Ashworth comes in for the multiple role, then suddenly John Murtough's got a different title and he's not really doing that role anymore, and it's just solely Dan Ashworth and probably somebody else as well, hopefully Paul Mitchell, but we'll have to see what is going on. I'm just happy we're getting a competent sporting director in, to be honest with you. I'm just happy that that's happening. But what do you guys think? Newcastle have recruited well, but I would prefer Mitchell, Zero Blade. Yeah, Mitchell would be my first choice as well, to be honest with you. But I do think Dan Ashworth is, looking at what Newcastle, the players Newcastle have recruited, I think he's done a decent job. Doesn't absolutely get me over the moon excited, but he's done a decent job. But would he leave Newcastle? A lot of people saying they wouldn't see him leaving Newcastle for Man United. Are we arrogant to think he would? I think he would, especially for the right paycheck, if you know what I'm talking about. So, but then again, Newcastle will have all the money in the world, don't they? Interesting stuff, interesting debate. Talk about it in the comments. But I'm just glad that we're getting another sporting director. To be quite honest with you, because we need, it's a massive thing in football, and we've been so poor in that area. Sporting director, we've been so poor in it. So to look like we're recruiting somebody is good news. And to be honest with you, I really did think it was Paul Mitchell. That shocked me on this morning's show. Ashworth only joined Newcastle last year, by the way. So he's not had too long in that role. I'm going to have to do some proper research on him and get back to you, because that's just some breaking news coming out there. Lastly, before we wrap up the show, because me and Mark will be live on That's Football from 11 to the Champions League draw. Mark will be joining us via technology in the studio to do the draw on the Champions League. That'll be coming up soon. I just want to talk to you a little bit about Andre Onana. So, Andre Onana tells Sky, "You want to tell me in 6 months the best goalkeeper in the Champions League last season can become the worst in the world? Nah. I know it'll be all right here at Man United. It's just a matter of time. Everything is temporary and we're in a difficult period, but the better days will come. I'm very sure of it. And when I saw how we work and how we train, I am confident it will change." Brilliant talking from Onana. Obviously got to do his talking on the pitch. Got a clean sheet at Anfield. So, you know, because I felt like that interview was so set up, because they probably had it filmed for a little bit while. Then they released it just before the Anfield game. I think it was set up for the interview, and then, you know, us to concede goals and Onana get a bit of stick, and the backlash of Man United, the headlines. I feel like that's how it was set up. But I'm so glad he put in a good performance and got a clean sheet off the back of that interview. He talked the talk and he walked the walk. But of course he's got to improve. He's not started his Man United career very well, especially in the Champions League, a big part of why we went out. But I think in the Premier League, he keeps getting more and more solid and he's completely building on it. And yesterday was a very decent performance. Of course, his passing could have been better, but he still executed some good passes. But you're at Anfield, you're under pressure, and you're already not a good run. You're going to expect some sort of mistakes. But I think he's embedding into the role, and I think he will come good. I really do. But I just want to bring up this little stat for you here, just to let you guys know. Andre Onana has now prevented 3.3 goals, second most, and has a 75.6% save percentage, second highest in the Premier League this season. Second highest save percentage in the Premier League this season, and prevented the second most amount of goals. To contrast these numbers to last season, David De Gea prevented minus 1.5 goals, 11th in the Premier League, and had a 70.1% save percentage, 9th in the Premier League. So, by the way, that is just stats. And of course, you know, I was an advocate of getting a new goalkeeper in, absolutely. But I'm going to be honest, like, last season De Gea so far was better than this season Onana, even when it comes down to stats. Even when it comes over to stats. Last season's David De Gea so far compared to Onana this season was better. Like, there's no doubt in that, even because of stats. But I just thought I'd get it out there that I do think Onana is building, and I think he will become a good goalkeeper for Man United. And there is still worries, you know. Sometimes he looks like he's got a mistake in him. He does look a bit shaky at times, and his passing needs to improve. We need to play to his strengths when playing out from the back and get that system in play. But in the Premier League, he's building. In Europe, he needs to hopefully do better again next year. But I think we've got to get behind this goalkeeper, and to keep a clean sheet at Anfield is a brilliant, brilliant thing. And it's a brilliant thing for the defence. It's a team effort. Like Varane tagged in his Instagram post, Varane, you know, Evans, Dalot, Shaw and Onana all got a tag because the defence did amazingly well to keep that clean sheet. Also, what did I want to say then? I forgot. Oh yeah, I think he's joint top for Golden Glove now in the Golden Glove race, which is crazy for Man United, and that just shows stats aren't everything, but it's a good trajectory to be on. But thank you everyone for watching. We are going to switch across to That's Football now for the Champions League draw. We'll be doing it from the studio. Mark will be joining us via technology in the studio. Make sure you go across there. I'm sad United aren't in it, but we can look at it unobjectively, and we can hope Arsenal and City get tough draws, and we can look at it like that. But thank you everyone for watching the show. Make sure you hit a like on the video, and please do join us ahead of the Champions League draw, round of 16. Wish we were in it, but we're not. Join us on That's Football in literally just a second. I'm going to swap over now. Thank you, everyone. Love the show. Love the community. Hit a like on the video, and we'll see you there in a sec.